Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Splash City Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Hartman. We're continuing to look at anything basketball related across the upper Midwest, including the Timberwolves this week. We'll talk about last week's performance. They went 2-1 with a couple of comfortable wins, followed by a tough loss at home to the Denver Nuggets. And we'll also talk a little bit about the high school season, and that's kicking off this week. For the boys, the girls started last week, and some players signed national letters of intent to play basketball at the college level. So we'll talk about that as well as some big storylines out of college last week, some interesting games, some interesting performances, and more on that. So a lot of fun things. And then I'm excited to talk about this last piece, really, fun segment where I'm going to look at some of the best college basketball arenas and why you should visit them, and maybe talk a little bit about some of the ones I've been to as well. So that'll be the wrap of the show. But first, I want to talk about the Wolves. So with that, let's get into it. All right, so the Wolves had 3 games last week. They went 2-1, like I said. Wins over Sacramento and Utah, Sacramento being their second win in the NBA Cup. And they played a back-to-back with the Nuggets the next night on Saturday, where they took a loss. Really competitive, close game through 3 quarters. The Nuggets pulled away in the 4th. So at this point, the Wolves are 8-5. They had a chance to move up to, I think, a tie for 3rd or 4th in the West with a win against Denver. However, now they're back into the lower rungs of the playoff picture in the Western Conference. I know it's early to talk about playoffs, but just I think with how competitive the West is, it's important to keep track of that, because a win or a loss in November counts the same as a loss in March when it comes to the NBA. So no nights off. The Wolves gotta stay on top of it here, because the West is gonna be brutal all year. There's just the top is title contenders, and then everybody in that middle group is gonna be really good. So let's first talk about the Jazz game. Pretty comfortable win. It was 7 points in Utah, but overall the Wolves were in control. So for most of that game, Edwards led the way with 35 points. And there's kind of been I'd say a consistent theme so far is like Edwards and Randall are going to be pretty consistent. Jaden McDaniels has continued to ascend in his offensive game. His defense has always been pretty elite, but his offensive game, especially when Anthony Edwards was out, they really relied more on McDaniels to score. And so if they can carry that into games, especially when Ant is off the floor and you need some more wing scoring, that could be where Jaden really steps up and asserts his offensive prowess. So one of the things I mentioned the other day in one of the pods was about the Wolves' kind of inability to beat the better teams they've played so far. So they are 0-4 against the Lakers and Nuggets this year, which, those are the teams, maybe more so the Lakers, that they'll be competing for a playoff spot with. I think the Nuggets are going to be probably a little bit above the Wolves in terms of standings and record, and so there maybe won't be as much of a competition for positioning in the Western Conference playoffs with the Nuggets. But you're 0-5 right now against teams above 500. The best win for the Wolves this season right now is the Portland Trail Blazers, which was opening night. That was a struggle to win that game. I think Portland coming into the year was not thought of as a real competitive team, though they're only a game below 500 at this moment of the recording. So it's at some point they're going to break through. The Wolves are going to break through. They're going to beat a quality team, but right now they're kind of beating up on the lottery teams and losing to playoff teams. So I don't expect that to continue, but they'll have another chance later this week. One thing that I keep going back to, and I've talked about this on the podcast a few times, but just the bench. 2 years ago, that was a strength of the team. They talked about having, they had Nikhil, they have Kyle Anderson, they had Nas, and that was kind of the core of the bench at that time. And you could count on them to not only like maintain, but sometimes grow leads and to push. And now you flip those guys for Nas and Mike Conley. And Nas, I think, is still going to produce at the level he has in the past, but instead of some younger guys with a little more juice to come in and make some plays. Last year that was Dante and Nikhil Alexander-Walker and Naz Reid, and now you got Mike Conley. So I like Mike. He's had a great career. He can make some shots. He's overall pretty smart player. Moves the ball, gets the offense going, but at this point, they're playing 7 guys. Saturday's game against Denver, Nas and Mike Conley both played a decent amount. Nas played 31 minutes, but Jalen Clark played 11, and Rob Dillingham played 6. So they're pretty thin at this point. So I've been harping on this for a couple weeks, but I would love to see Jalen Clark get closer to 20 minutes a night. And, I think maybe when Terrence Shannon Jr. comes back and is healthy, he's another guy that might get a few more minutes rather than Rob. But I think right now they just need some bodies to play. I don't think Finch is in love with Rob Dillingham's game at this point. I don't know that he can play against some of these teams, especially playoff caliber teams. But Shannon Jr. might be able to, especially if he's coming in with Mike Conley on the floor or with Ant on the floor. There's other ball handlers that he doesn't need to be that guy. But I think, you look at what happened in the offseason, and the Wolves basically let Alexander Walker go. They didn't make any additions. They kept the guys they wanted to keep. They kept Nas. They kept Julius Randle. But you look at Denver, and they brought in Tim Hardaway Jr. and Bruce Brown and Cam Johnson and Jonas Valanciunas. And while not maybe stars, those guys are having impacts. And now Denver used to be the team where the Wolves would play them, and you'd say, Denver doesn't have a bench. The Wolves bench will far outperform Denver's, and now that's flipped. And so that's, I think, from an identity standpoint, that is tough for the Wolves. Just looking up the stats from the other night against the Nuggets, and you look at the box score, Denver's bench, Julian Strawther didn't score a lot. Jonas Valanciunas had a 6-6, and he played only 11 minutes. Bruce Brown played 30 minutes. Spencer Jones played 17 minutes. And then, like I said, they got some guys who Cam Johnson's not even playing, so he's another guy that would normally play a decent amount. But I just think their Tim Hardaway Jr. had 23 points the other night. He has 5 of 6 from 3. I mean, that's a big difference from what the Wolves did in the offseason, where none of their they went with we're gonna assume we're gonna get better. Our young guys are gonna take strides. But right now you're seeing no Shannon Jr., limited Rob Dillingham, and very limited minutes from Jalen Clark. So I think my guess is they're going to have to make a move at the before the trade deadline, just to get somebody else in here that can contribute meaningful minutes. I'm not sure who's out there. Might have to do a segment on that. But I just think there's some concerns with the bench, and right now what was a strength is now somewhat of a weakness. Even though Naz Reid is still going to be an elite bench player, there just isn't as much around him. Let's look ahead. So looking ahead this week, the Wolves, from a fan standpoint, kind of interesting. They got number 1 pick Cooper Flagg and the Mavericks coming to town tonight, the 17th. Then they got the Wizards on the 19th. So, again, 2 more non-playoff team, lottery-bound teams probably should pick up 2 wins there. And before they go to Phoenix. Phoenix is playing good. They went a little younger. They traded Durant, and Bradley Beal's gone, and they got Jalen Green. The Suns, Grayson Allen's been playing tremendous, shooting the ball really well. So that should be a a good test. Like that's another opportunity. If the Wolves can go 3-0 this week, and then you get to 11-5, you're feeling pretty good. If you lose at Phoenix, you're 2-1, but you still really haven't beaten anybody. So, be a big week for the Timberwolves. A couple of performances I wanted to look at from around the NBA in the last week. Performance of the week: Steph Curry dropped 49 in the second game of a 2-game sweep of the Spurs. Curry still has this ability, at his age to still just take over games, be unguardable. His conditioning is incredible. His pace when he's working through screens and working away from the ball is just something to watch for young players. He was 16 of 26 from the field, 9 of 17 from 3, and 8 of 8 from the free throw line. So just an incredible performance. He continues to amaze at this later stage of his career. My team of the week last week, the Detroit Pistons, actually 3-0. They are now 11-2 first in the Eastern Conference. So going into the year, it was who's going to fill that void of Indiana losing Halliburton and subsequently their entire point guard system, except for now I think Nembhard and McConnell are back. And then Jason Tatum being out in Boston. So who was going to fill that void? We talked about possibly the Sixers. The Pistons are obviously making a strong case here in the East. Cade Cunningham's averaging 27.5 points a game and almost 10 assists a game. Jalen Duren, Tobias Harris, Duncan Robinson, Azar Thompson. They just have a really nice mix of players. Like Tobias Harris, kind of a veteran role player. Duncan Robinson, veteran shooter. Thompson, Duren, great defender. So the Pistons were my team of the week in the NBA. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about the future and as we look at National Signing Day here in Minnesota. All right, I wanted to spend a few minutes just talking about National Signing Day in Minnesota here. There was many great high school basketball players signed their national letters of intent, and both from the boys' side and the girls' side, some key headlines to talk about. First of all, I think what I found, there was at least 24 boys in Minnesota who signed letters of intent to play college basketball. Headliners being Nolan Anderson from Wayzata and Cedric Tomes from Eastridge going to Minnesota, signing with Nico Medved and the Gophers. Wayzata's Christian Wiggins headed to Iowa State. 6'10 forward from Faribault, Ryan Krieger, is going to Loyola Chicago. Dothan Ijadamola from Totino Grace is headed to Drake. Point guard Jaden Moore of Hopkins is going to North Dakota. And then Cretin-Durham Hall point guard JoJo Mitchell signed with St. Thomas. So the Cretin-Durham Hall to St. Thomas pipeline continues. One thing I wanted to let the listeners know, if you want to watch some high school basketball, obviously there's lots of great teams, great matchups, but one of them I wanted to point out was on December 13th. It's a Saturday at 5:30. Wayzata matches up with Cretin-Durham Hall in Edina. Should be absolutely phenomenal matchup. Wayzata, obviously, I just mentioned Nolan Anderson, Christian Wiggins. They also have their point guard going to UMD up in Duluth. And then on Cretin side, I just mentioned JoJo Mitchell going to St. Thomas, but they also have junior Ty Schlegel, who has signed and committed to Nebraska. So a couple of Division I, two teams with multiple Division I players on their rosters, great histories, great coaches. So that should be a super fun matchup on December 13th between Wayzata and Cretin-Durham Hall. On the girls' side, there's some big names. Madden Greenway from Providence Academy, daughter of Chad Greenway, former Viking. She is headed to Kentucky. And Tori Orline from Crosby Ironton, she signed with the Gophers. If you follow basketball in the state of Minnesota, everyone's heard of Madden Greenway. She's been just basically a stud for Providence since she came onto the scene, 7th or 8th grade. Last year, she averaged 34 points, 8.8 rebounds, 7.5 assists, 4.5 steals per game. She won a gold medal at the FIBA Under-19 World Cup. And Orline from Crosby, she actually leads the state with 2,061 career rebounds, and she's on pace to go over the 5,000 career point mark and 1,000 career assists. That's just crazy. So 5,000 career points and responsible for at least 2,000 career points just from her assists. So a couple of big names there, but Minnesota continues to produce great women's basketball players as well as men's. I think I briefly mentioned this, but the official kickoff of the boys basketball season is today, Monday the 17th, as they start practice. Girls started last week. Probably over the next 2 weeks, I'll do some more segments and pods on the high school season to try to get maybe some coaches on the podcast to talk about their teams, what they're seeing in their areas. But it's a fun time of year as we approach the Thanksgiving and the holiday season. The basketball season really ramps up. All right, just getting you caught up now on the college basketball scene over the last week or so. A couple of teams that have really stood out to me as national title contenders are UConn, Louisville, and Arizona. UConn looks primed and ready for another title run. They beat BYU by 2. Little caveat with that one, the Cougars were without starting point guard who was picked up for a DUI earlier in the week, and their starting center, Keba Keita, who I love, left in the first half due to some concussion symptoms, chasing a loose ball. So that left Terrence Reed, Alex Caravan, and I would say the UConn, even the UConn guards, there wasn't a lot of resistance at the rim. There wasn't as much size and toughness down low. So UConn had a pretty comfortable lead for most of that game, but BYU did come back at the end and make it interesting behind AJ DeBanza. But UConn looking really strong. They play just brutal schedule, so we'll see how they survive this. I mean, if they come out of this week unscathed, I think they have Arizona Wednesday, they have Illinois Friday, Kansas the next week, Florida the week after. So Danny Hurley's squad will be tested, no doubt about that. But they look very good. I hate to say it, but they look as tenacious and motivated as they did during their title years. The other team, Louisville, staked their claim back to relevance. They put the ACC on notice with a 96-88 win over Kentucky. Mikel Brown Jr., freshman point guard, put his name in the hat for freshman of the year. That list keeps growing every week, and he was sensational, hitting big shots, pushing the tempo, outside, inside, getting downhill. Super fun freshman point guard to watch. And Louisville's they did a nice job in the transfer portal. They just have a lot of nice pieces. Pat Kelsey's built a nice all-around team there in Louisville. Arizona might be the best team in the country right now. They beat Florida in the opener. This last week they took down UCLA 69-65. They limited All-American candidate Donovan Dent to 11 points on 5 of 16 shooting. UCLA shot 53% from 3, and Arizona still won. They have 2 of the better wins in the country this year. Really think the Wildcats have a chance to make a Final Four this year. They looked phenomenal. Gonzaga dismantled Greg McDermott and Creighton. Tough sledding for Jackson McAndrew from Wayzata and his team. But Mark Few and the Zags are 4-0. They, again, also have a lot of tough games coming up. Michigan is surviving by the skin of its teeth twice last week. They beat Wake Forest in overtime in a game they probably shouldn't have any business winning. The Demon Deacons kind of let that one slip away. Tough one for Wake Forest. That one might haunt them come if they're on the bubble come tournament time. And then later in the week, Michigan went on the road and beat TCU by 4. Nice to get a road win. True road game, not a neutral site. But TCU is not expected to be that strong of a team in the Big 12. And Michigan, just barely snuck by them as well. Some really sad news out of Maryland. Cottage Grove native Pharrell Payne came down extremely awkwardly after a dunk. Looked like he was holding his hip. Not sure what the diagnosis is, but did not look good. He was stretchered off after that fall. So really sad for someone who's been third school in 3 years. Has had some really productive games, and it's fun to see him grow. But based on just seeing how it looked when he fell, I'll be surprised if he's back this year. So tough news. For my player of the week this week, I wanted to stay local and choose someone from the Minnesota area, Twin Cities region, and Terrence Brown Jr. is my pick. He's a guard at Utah from Minneapolis, starred at Columbia Heights in 2022, went to Fairleigh Dickinson out of high school, spent 2 years there, and now he's at Utah. And he is putting up some really impressive numbers for the Utes. And I just wanted to call him out because he's a really exciting player. He had a 30-piece not too long ago, and this week, so currently, right now, he's averaging 23.8 points per game, which is good for 12th in the country. So really exciting stuff from Twin Cities native Terrence Brown Jr. And then my performance of the week. If you didn't catch the Purdue-Alabama game last week, you missed a phenomenal basketball game. I said going into it, if Purdue kept the score in the 70s or 80s, they'd have a chance to win. And if it got to the 90s or 100s, I favored Alabama. Purdue wins 87-80. Braden Smith looked like the player of the year candidate that is expected. He had 29 points and 7 rebounds, which, as Nate Oates, Alabama's coach, pointed out, those 7 rebounds for a 5'11 point guard, more than the starting front court for Alabama. So if you want to know why that game turned to Purdue's favor, they out-rebounded Alabama 52-28, including 17-5 on the offensive glass. Trey Kaufman-Renn came back from his early season injury to put up an impressive 19 and 15. Seemed to come up with a big basket every time Purdue needed one. Every time the crowd was on their feet and it was loud, it was either Braden Smith or TKR getting a bucket for Purdue. So they leapfrogged Houston back into the number 1 spot after that impressive win at Alabama. One more shout out I want to do on the college level, and that is for Oakland University out of Michigan. Probably not a huge name. They did upset Kentucky a couple years ago in a really fun game in the tournament, so that might be why you've heard of Oakland. I remember watching Oakland in the old, I don't even remember the name of the conference, but when NDSU and SDSU first went D1, Oakland was in their conference, and Oakland was always the team to beat. Greg Campy, great coach. Super fun. If you hear him on interviews, he's got a great personality. But I want to give them a shout out today because they opened the season at number 7 Michigan, at number 1 Purdue. Then they played the other number 1 team, Houston, last week. They do get a little bit of a break before they head to East Lansing to face Michigan State in their annual game against Michigan State on the 20th of December. So I think it's always cool when people aren't afraid to schedule, and Oakland and Greg Campy are not afraid to go play the big boys. So just kind of a fun quirk in the college season. Looking ahead this week, some marquee matchups. Tuesday is actually one of my favorite days of the year for college basketball, outside of March, of course. But it's the Champions Classic. The Champions Classic is Kentucky, Kansas, Duke, and Michigan State. They rotate opponents every year. They rotate venues. It's either in Madison Square Garden or Chicago usually. And those are usually some really fun games. Last year, Kentucky beat Duke, and Cooper Flagg, I think that was his first big game, and ended up going Kentucky's way. So this year, the matchups are Michigan State and Kentucky, and then Duke and Kansas in the nightcap. So Tuesday, check those games out. That's always a fun one. All right, last thing I want to talk about today is kind of just my my fun segment of the week. This is like my bucket list college hoops venues list. I've been lucky enough to go to Cameron Indoor Stadium at Duke. I went to Allen Fieldhouse at Kansas, in Lawrence, Kansas, a few years back. Of course, been to Williams Arena, the Lee and Penny Anderson Arena. I've been in Hamlin's Hutton Arena as well. But there's some other just bucket list arenas that I've always wanted to go to, and I just haven't had the chance, but hopefully down the road. And maybe you've been there. If you have, hit me up in the comments or in the on Instagram. But I want to start with probably one of the more famous arenas in the country, Hinkle Fieldhouse. Hinkle is the home of Butler, but probably most well known for being the arena that they filmed Hoosiers in. The championship game of Hoosiers is in Hinkle, and it's just one of those historic places. It's kind of cool. It's got the glass on the back side of it, so that's always a fun. That would be one for any basketball fan to hit up, just mostly from the Hoosiers perspective. But it's just a really cool old arena, built in 1928, so it's been around. It's kind of I don't know, Indiana's cathedral of basketball, they call it. So Hinkle Fieldhouse would be probably number one on my bucket list. Number two, I would say the Palestra. So the Palestra's in Philadelphia. It's kind of home to, I think it's home to Penn basketball traditionally, but they play a lot of games there, and including like the Big Five games, which I think is like LaSalle and Villanova and Penn and is it Temple? Might be Temple. Anyway, they play at the Palestra. Again, just a really cool old venue, and worth checking out if you're a big basketball fan in general, but for sure college basketball. That would be a great arena to check out. That one, just trying to check here when it was built, looks like 1927. So again, very old. The third on my list, and I'm not a huge Kentucky fan, but man, Rupp Arena has got to be on a bucket list of any college basketball arena, just from its, the intensity of Big Blue Nation to just the sheer size of it. I think it holds over 20,000 people, if I'm not mistaken, 20,500. And so, just Kentucky's a blue blood. They're a program that, lives and breathes college basketball. So, Rupp has to be on the list of places to visit if you were going to build a bucket list. Very similar to the Dean Dome in North Carolina. So same type of thing, right? Like they're blue blood. It's usually full. I will say Kentucky, I think, generally has better crowds in terms of sellouts. Every opponent. The Dean Smith Center in Chapel Hill also seats. They seat 21,750. So just huge crowds, and so when that place is rocking, it's got to be just incredibly loud. Definitely on my bucket list. I've been on the campus of UNC in Chapel Hill, but I didn't get to go into the arena. Side note, their museum and history at Chapel Hill UNC is phenomenal. I did go in there. Just seeing the names and the Michael Jordan section, like they had a letter, Michael Jordan's letter to Coach K, turning down Duke and choosing North Carolina. That was super, just cool to see. And, the James Worthies and Antoine Jameson, Vince Carter, all that. I mean, it's incredible. So that's part of it too at the Dean Dome for UNC. The Pit at New Mexico is on my list. Now, I'll admit, like, not something I typically, a conference that I'm all about, Mountain West, but the Pit has a vibe, and like you can see it when you watch on TV. It's the reason they call it the Pit is it's down below ground, and New Mexico typically has pretty good basketball, and there's probably not, a lot of competition for things to do in Albuquerque from an athletic standpoint, right? Not to disparage Albuquerque, it's probably an amazing city, but just from a sports viewing, right? Like there's not professional sports there. There's not other colleges necessarily. So just the Pit would be a great place to see a game. Super loud. The capacity there is 14,800. It's over 15,000 now. They've made some upgrades in the last handful of years. So just another really loud environment for people who live and breathe the Lobos basketball, but that would be a great arena to visit. A couple more on my list. Pauley Pavilion at UCLA. That's mostly a history-based one, right? Going from Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Lou Alcindor, and Kevin Love, and everybody in between. Like Bill Walton, right? Like just incredible place, history. I'm sure their museum is just outstanding. Closer to home, Hilton Coliseum in Iowa State. You hear about Hilton Magic all the time and pulling upsets over Kansas and Houston and things like that in those games. And man, the environment there looks just outstanding. I'd love to see a game there at some point. I think it's only a 3.5 hour drive from the Twin Cities. So definitely want to hit up Hilton Coliseum sometime as well. Texas Tech, same thing. Like Texas Tech didn't really have much of a basketball history. Bob Knight comes there, Tubby Smith gets through there, and then they start building this program up. And now you see it when you watch these Big 12 games, and Houston or Kansas or Arizona come in there. Those are fun games, and that's a fun environment. The last one I'm going to talk about from a bucket list standpoint is in the Big Ten. Might be thinking Michigan State. Actually, I'm going Mackey Arena at Purdue. Got to be one of the most underrated environments in all of college basketball. Definitely the best in the Big Ten. Obviously, a lot of this has to do with this team and the success you have. But Purdue's had success for quite a while, since basically Gene Cady, probably even before that. But I know Gene Cady's years, they were good. Matt Painter's took it to a whole nother level. And when you're good, people want to come watch. And that just creates this environment. And Purdue has one of the best ones in the country. Lastly, this is maybe an honorable mention, but local Twin Cities fans, if you want to go see a really unique environment, go to Hamlin and Hutton Arena. Hutton Arena actually has hosted the Lakers, Minneapolis Lakers, back in the 50s. They host some tournaments. I think they still do a holiday tournament for high school teams, but Hamlin's got a really cool gym. It's really old, historic, kind of a fun environment there too. They got the seating up around the top, the place you can watch up around the top. So Hamlin's Hutton Arena would be another one if you want to stay a little closer to home and want to see something cool. But those are my bucket list college basketball venues. If you get a chance to see them, if you've been to some other cool ones that I left off, let me know about it on Instagram or reach out with a review or whatever on the podcast. So that's my list. All right, so that's the show today. Thanks for listening. I appreciate you, giving me your time today. And a lot of basketball to watch this week. We got the Wolves again. We got 3 games. The Gophers play again tomorrow night. St. Thomas is playing. The high school season started, so we'll see probably some scrimmages and jamborees coming up this weekend or maybe next week. And it's a great time of year. Tuesday night, you got Michigan State, Kentucky, Kansas versus Duke. Should be a great matchup. This weekend, we'll find out if the Wolves can get a win over a winning team. Make sure you follow on Instagram, follow on Facebook. This has been the Splash City Basketball Podcast.
Back in that bag again. Whoa, yeah. Hey. Back in that.